Hello and welcome to my workshop again. This time I'm going to show you how I used all these scrap leftover pieces of wood from previous projects to make this jewellery box. If you want to see what this jewellery box looks like on the inside and all the rest of it, I'm going to go in detail at the end of the video, but right now I'm going to get into the making of this box. I've done some pictures of what I think it's going to look like, just rough dimensions. I've also done some sketches of a mechanism inside. I'll explain that in a moment. I think I'll be using this black walnut for the outside of the box. This piece is long enough that I can cut it and wrap it all the way around the box so that the grain will be continuous all the way around. So the height of the jewellery box will be the height of this plank of wood, and this will form the sides. I've also got some white oak, some quarter sawn white oak, which I think I'll use to make a thin liner inside of the jewellery box. I've got some maple, which might be good for accents. I have lots of this wenge, a couple of pieces there. I also have this piece of paduk and this piece of cherry. This is actually a great opportunity to use up all these odds and ends of bits of wood. So I made this SketchUp sketch showing the rough dimensions. I particularly want the drawer to not have a handle. I think it'll spoil the appearance of the piece to have a handle on the front. So I've been thinking about ways of making it so that when you open the lid, they will push the drawer out. I had a few different ideas here and made some little drawings. I think the one that I'm actually going to go with is probably this one here, where basically I'm going to have a wire and some pulleys. So when you open the lid, the wire will run around the pulleys and pull a wedge, which will push the drawer out. Maybe this will work out, maybe not. I have no idea. I'm going to give it a try. I also bought some decorative hardware, some piano hinges, some locks, hasps, and things like that, which I think will be nice. So I think I should start by making the outside of the box. And the outside of the box starts with the piece of black walnut and the jointer. So after jointing and planing this piece of wood, it's now 6 inches wide, so that'll be the height of the jewellery box. It's 13 millimeters thick, which is about ½ an inch, which I think is probably too much for a jewellery box. I think it's too chunky and too solid. It needs to be more fine. So I think I'll reduce this maybe to 10 millimeters and take another look at it and see what that looks like. And the grain pattern is quite nice. So I think once we've cut this and wrapped it all around the box, I think the box will be quite pretty. So that'll be half of the back. And then it needs to be the side, which is 200 millimeters. So it needs to be another 100, 200, which will be here. As we're drawing these lines, I'm just going to write on the masking tape. That's the front, and we'll designate that as the up. So this will be the top, this will be the bottom of the box. So I've got this support set up to hold a piece of wood as I push it through the bandsaw. Of course, the bandsaw blade is still about 1 millimeter thick, so we are going to lose like 1 millimeter of the grain pattern, but that's obviously much better than losing the 6 millimeters of the miter saw blade. I've set the blade here to be exactly 134.5 degrees, so that this in here, this is going to be 45 degrees minus ½ a degree. I think that's like a way better result. Like, I don't see any chip out there at all. So the bandsaw actually did a really good job on the mitering. I don't even think I need to put a plane down these. I think these will go together just fine. I think I can go ahead and glue this up now. So after a very careful bit of chiseling, you now see the drawer front and the side go together fairly closely. I guess we'll see what happens when it's all fully assembled, but at this point, it looks okay. So I've cut out most of the pieces. I also attached a strip of brass to the front of the drawer, which I think looks quite nice. So I'll continue that theme throughout. The two pieces at the back, though, I'm not very happy. I'm obviously the grain is not matching across there, but I think that looks really ugly. So what I'm planning to do is basically I'm going to cut that joint open, and I'm going to put a piece of this very dark wenge wood. I'm going to cut some small slots and put some of the dark wenge wood in there as well. I think it'll add a decorative element and also make the corners much stronger. And also in the lid here, maybe put a piece of wenge in here, so that, that will also maybe look nice. Also, before I finish assembling the box sides, I need to figure out this mechanism for pushing the door open. So basically, there's the lid here. So the lid here is going to have a piece of wire. The wire is going to go around two pulleys. It's going to pull this wedge up and down here when you open and close the lid, and that will push the drawer out this way. Yeah, so I just cut a small piece out between these two, the same thickness as that. And I don't know, I think that's an improvement. Obviously it's a little bit proud, that's deliberate. I'll take a plane later and just make that flat. But yeah, likewise, I'll take a block plane and just tidy that up after we've glued it. Yeah, I think it's going to look better. So this is what it looks like with the new piece inserted. I think this is an improvement on just butting up the two mismatched pieces of wood. If you have another solution, please let me know. That's all of the little spots marked where I need to put pieces through the corners. I'm using this block of cedar, which I cut at 45 degrees, to help me to hold these at 45 degrees as I put them through the bandsaw. And I've got this digital caliper, which I'm using to make sure that, you can't read that on the camera, but to make sure that that's 12 millimeters. So I got a head start with cutting these slots in the corners using the bandsaw. Now I just need to knock out those little pieces with a chisel. A lot of people cut these slots in the corner after they've glued the box together, but I actually want to use these as a way of aligning the pieces too, because I want the grain to line up around the box. So this will ensure that the pieces are perfectly aligned when I glue them. So now I need to make some pieces of wood out of this wenge, which are 5 millimeters thick, so that I can drive them into these slots when I glue this together. Whenever you're about to glue together a box or a cabinet or anything like that, it's always a really good idea to sand the inside first. It's so much more difficult to sand the inside after you've glued it back together. I think this will be enough finish for the inside of the box. We don't need a sort of high gloss interior to the box. I will of course be putting a high gloss finish on the outside of the box later. So after a very stressful few minutes, I hate glue ups, they're always stressful. It's like, you know, if you make a mistake, it's glued up incorrectly, there's not really any going back. I end up with this very complicated clamping arrangement, which I hope is going to clamp this together square and straight and flat and all the things we like. I thought it might be kind of neat to make the top of the jewellery box have a kind of domed lid. I had these bits of triangular wood left over from a cutting board that I made. There's a video about that if you want to see it. So I just took some of those triangular pieces and you know, cut them to 45 degrees on a miter saw, nothing very difficult there. And then what I will do is take some of this wood and basically fill in this gap, and then smooth it off, so it'll make a kind of like a domed effect. When cutting these pieces to fill in the gap here, I just put some blue tape while I cut it on the miter saw. That gives you like a really clean cut with no breakout. So now I just need to flush cut these corner splines, and the box is kind of starting to take shape, so I can see now kind of pretty much what it's going to look like. So I think this box will look a lot better with rounded corners. You can see I've been using this round over bit. I've already rounded off these edges. I quite like the way they look. So now I'm going to go around the top and just round it off as well. So the round over is not that much. You can see it's quite a small radius, but I think it will give the box a kind of softer, more finished look. For the inside, I think I'd like to use a lighter coloured wood, and I have this piece of quarter sawn oak. I think I need to cut this to about 3mm thick. So the glue is dry on the lid, and now I need to cut through here, all the way through the box. Of course, you build it as a single piece like this and then cut the lid away afterwards to make sure that the lid is like perfectly aligned with the sides of the box. Okay, so here we go. Of course, having made this in one single piece and then cut it in half, having cut it in half, the two pieces, as you would expect, now fit, you know, perfectly together. Here I'm starting to make a neck holder for necklaces. This will be going inside of the lid of the jewellery box. making the grids to divide up the compartments, I had to come up with some very creative clamping arrangements. This box will be a friction fit inside the lid. It has hooks along the top to hang the necklaces, and the necklaces will dangle down into that pocket at the bottom. This is the wire that I'm going to use to operate the drawer mechanism, so this will be fixed to the lid. It'll go through the side of the box and it will pull up the drawer lock when the lid is opened. When making these little trays, it certainly helps to make the squares a whole number of 1, 2 or 3 inches, because then you can use these 3-2-1 blocks to space them out and keep them all square and parallel whilst you're gluing them up. So I'm starting to make the locking mechanism. I've made this piece of wood which fits, across the bottom of the box, and which will be able to move up and down. And it's going to hold these pieces, which I'll fix into here later. These pieces are copied from my drawing that I did earlier. What I'm going to do is take 2 of these pieces and put one at each end. I'm going to fix these together with some double-sided tape, and then cut out this profile with the bandsaw. So this locking mechanism will go together like this. These 2 pieces fit like that, and that will go into the bottom of the box, and that will slide up and down like this to lock and unlock the drawer. The idea is that when the drawer closes, this will lift up and click into place like this. If these are built into the drawer, that when you push the drawer back, it will click into place like that, and then of course now these are locked. So these disposable glue bottles have a really fine metal straw to dispense the glue, and they're super useful for this kind of very fine work. It's certainly true what they say about never having too many clamps. Just look at how many I needed for this box. With the drawer completed, I think the next task is going to be to install these hinges. You have to be very precise about the positioning of the hinges to ensure that when you close the lid, the sides of the box and the front of the box are perfectly aligned. So now it's time to make the pulley mechanism that will pull the drawer open when I open the lid. I've got these pieces of 3mm stainless steel rod, which I'm putting in the center. The pulleys go over the top of those, and then there's a metal plate that kind of closes that compartment. It'll be hidden by the drawer. Now I just need to thread the wire through the lid and then around the pulleys down to the drawer, so that when the lid opens, it'll pull the wire, and that will pull up the drawer lock. This was really fiddly to do and took me quite a long time, so I cut the video in parts. After wrapping the wire around the pulleys, I can now put this metal plate in place and secure it with a couple of screws. I finished installing the lock opening mechanics on this side. I didn't do the other side yet. So the pulleys are in place in here. The wire is installed. The wire is going through the lock mechanism and is attached here to the lid. But it doesn't work because it has a number of issues, actually. So one issue is that when you open the lid, it pulls the wire and it pulls this up, and that's kind of okay. But when it goes back down, the problem is that the wire is too stiff to go around these pulleys by the weight of this thing. This is too light to pull the wire. I have to pull it quite hard with my fingers to actually make the wire run through. It will kind of run through, but this would need to be a lot heavier for it to work. That's one problem. The next problem is that I just miscalculated somehow. When you fully open the lid, like this, it pulls up this much wire. But the lock only needs to travel by this much. It needs to travel basically 25 millimeters or about 1 inch. But when you open the lid, it pulls up like more than 2 inches of wire. So somehow I just miscalculated. This should have been much closer to the hinge. So I'm not sure how to change that at this point. Maybe I'll do some kind of like fill this small hole, drill another hole close to the hinge. That's one option. Another option, which I'm going to try first actually, because it doesn't involve altering the wood. The first option I'm going to try is actually bringing the two wires from either side into the middle and putting a spring here, so that what will happen is as you open the lid, the wire will be drawn through, and it won't lift this initially. Okay, it'll just expand the spring, and then when this little ferrule thing, this little thing here reaches the lock, only then will it pull the lock up. So as you open the lid, for the first half, it'll just be stretching the spring, and then for the second half, it will lift the lock. I'm going to try that first because that doesn't require me to do substantial modifications here. Because moving this to an earlier point is going to be really complicated. So I've replaced the wire with the nylon twine. I've just tied a knot in the end of it so that it won't pull through. It seems to work okay. But I'll maybe tie a bigger knot. I don't know, I'll use something else. And then it runs fairly smoothly through the wheels. Now I just need to attach the lock and see if when I close the lid, if the lock has enough weight. This runs really smoothly now. So I feel fairly confident that the weight of the lock is going to be enough to be able to pull this string through when I close the lid. But anyway, we now reach a point where when I close the lid, you can see that the lock here does actually go up and down. So all we now need to do is make sure that after the lock reaches the bottom and we continue to close the lid, we just need a spring to take up the extra slack in this twine. Okay, oh, it's quite stiff as springs go. I also don't think it's going to stretch to twice its length and spring back. If I stretch it, it springs back a little bit, but it doesn't go all the way back. There's no way this is going to stretch and come back. So this wire is not the right kind of wire. It's not elastic enough. So after my spring winding experiment didn't really work out, I'm going to just try using these elastic bands instead. The elastic bands won't last a long time. They'll eventually become not elastic, but I can always change them, and maybe later on I can find a spring and put the spring in. But for now, at least, I'm going to try using some elastic bands. Okay, let's flip the box over and see. So the first thing I can see is that the lock doesn't drop all the way down, because in order to drop all the way down, it has to slightly stretch the elastic, and it doesn't really have much weight. So I need to make sure the elastic bands are slack when the lock is down. But that's what happens when we open the lid. Ooh. So it does work. Like when the first part, it unlocks the drawer, but then this part is really, really hard to pull the lid up. And the lid is like, the elastic bands are like pulling the lid shut. It's really hard to hold the lid open. So the elastic bands are too strong. So over at the router table, I cut some small grooves here and here for the wire to run in. I also routed out this piece along here, so there's space for the elastic bands. And I routed out this groove in here to hold the strips of lead. So to decide how much lead I should use, I've just put a couple of bits of twine through the locking mechanism. I'm going to lift it up and then see like what angle does it dangle at. Okay, now I'm going to attach one piece of lead with some masking tape. So this is going to be one piece of lead. Now let's try again. So now it hangs like that, which is a little more vertical, not completely vertical. Okay, so let's try 2 strips of lead. And again, not completely vertical, but better. I can feel that it's heavier. I think it'll definitely go down better. So, okay, so now we have 3 strips of lead. We need to dangle it this way around. Ooh, now it's actually noticeably more vertical, and also I can feel quite a bit of tension on the strings as well. So I think I'll go with 3. If we turn the box the correct way over, put the drawer in its place, we should find that it locks, which it does. I heard it lock. And now when you lift the lid, lifting the whole thing, like this, of course the drawer is now unlocked because this is up at the top like this. Okay, and then when we drop the lid, the lock should drop back down again, and then that should lock in place. You know, yeah, it really does work. Oh, need to, yeah. It lifts it initially, and then it stretches the elastic. You can put the lid down, and the lock goes down again. And yeah, it's exactly what we want. Perfect. My goodness, it actually works. It's time to make the base of the jewelry box, and so I've cut, this is actually the last of my wedge. I have no more left. This is like all that I have, but I've cut it into these 3 pieces. If I edge bond these, they'll be just the right size. I'm going to use these router bits to shape the edges so that when I glue them up, they'll, you know, the registration will be good on the surface. So the next thing I'm going to do is I need to line this drawer with felt. I need to make sure that the edges of the felt aren't, apparent. So what I think I will do is put the felt in the bottom of the drawer first, and then line the inside of the drawer with some very thin wood. I've cut some very thin pieces of oak here on the bandsaw, which I can use to do that. So the outside of the box is now finally finished. All I need to do is put the lock and the hasp on the front, but the inside still needs quite a bit of work. I find these Japanese brass clamps really helpful for gluing up these quite small parts. So I'm finally down to just one thing left to do. The one thing left to do is to make this a place where you can store rings. I want to make it so that you can put like a row of rings like this, however many you can fit in. I'm going to do them I bought these like silicone tubes. I thought I would coat the tubes with felt and put them in like this, so that you could put the ring down in between them. So that's it, another project completely finished. This is what the finished box looks like. I'm very happy with it. I think it looks really nice. So when the box is locked, the drawer is also locked. This can't open. But when you open the lid, you can see when you open the lid, it pulls on some strings at the side here, and those strings lift a locking mechanism at the back that unlocks the drawer and also pushes it out a little bit, so that now we can open the drawer. And then once you close the lid, of course the drawer's open, but when you push the drawer closed, there's a click, and now I can't pull it open. It's locked again. This is what the jewellery box looks like inside, with some jewellery inside it. There's plenty of room for all of my wife's jewellery and also some watches and other things. Obviously, if you're making this box, you can make it whatever size, shape you like, to accommodate the jewellery that you have. This is going to last us a while though, because like I say, with all the jewellery inside, there's still quite a bit of spare space. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.